Hello, Guardians and Grip Hooks. My name is TBSky, and there's a new Star Guardians animated short out, which is wonderful news for me because it means I get to sit here and gush about animation for a while, which is one of my favorite activities. Now, this is, like everything Riot puts out pretty much in terms of animated shorts, tends to be pretty uniformly brilliant. And it's because Riot has a habit of working with really good animation studios to produce these things. This is not, I believe, produced in-house. It's produced by probably the same people who did the Burning Bright thing from last Star Guardian event. I can't be sure because I don't think they've actually released that information, but that would be my guess anyway. And so, as usual, when it comes to these animated shorts, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through it, and I'm just going to look at it and pause whenever there's something interesting to talk about, and then frame by frame my way through it. So this might be a really, really long one. Like, I know this short is, 3 minutes long? This video might well be 45 minutes. Who knows? We're going to find out. So let's start right at the start with something that's going to be kind of constant throughout the entire short. Take a look at what the camera is doing as we're following Neeko. I'm going to put this down to half speed so we can really look at it. It's low to the ground, it's very close up in on Neeko, and it's moving really, really quickly. Like, there's a lot of motion blur on the ground, there's a lot of emphasis on the speed with which Neeko is moving, and the low angle does a lot to sell that, to really get that sense of kinetic energy in there. And that's something that's really well done in this animated short, is just the use of the camera and the clever manipulation of the ways in which, like, cuts and camera transitions and movements are used. And you can see this in the first section of the animated short, in fact. And by the way, little detail you wouldn't notice unless you're frame by frame your way through it. Saya is right there. Like, and you don't see her when you're watching this thing on full speed because you don't know to look for her. And that's a little bit important because what we get here from this perspective is Neeko basically dodging out of the way of a bunch of attacks that are coming from our perspective, functionally out of nowhere. Right? It's just these shots that come around and we don't see where they're coming from, and we don't get any opportunity to react to them. But Neeko, at this point, you can see she notices, well, hang on, there's a shot coming in from the left side there, and she dodges, and then we see it right here. So we are always reacting to what's happening to Neeko right as she's reacting to it, which again, it puts us in her headspace of being chased and of being overmatched and overwhelmed and just trying to get the hell out of there. Which is really well done, which again, the low camera helps do that. If you had like a wide angle on the whole scene from the start, then we would immediately know, okay, Neeko's there, Saya's there, Rakan's probably somewhere in the scene, and we'd have a much better sense of like, as an audience, we would feel a greater sense of control because, oh, we know what's going on, we know what's happening. But we start on a moment of what is functionally like a really confused moment. So we are instantly put. It also helps us sympathize with Neeko, by the way. Like, if you don't know anything about Star Guardians, because we start from her perspective, being chased down, being attacked, and just desperately trying to escape, we are immediately on her side. So even if you don't know that Saya is the antagonist here, you understand it immediately because she's the one who's doing all the attacking right away. And of course, also her character design helps sell that once you finally get to have a look at her. Which we don't for the first 10-15 seconds. Like, we get this shot of her here, as Neeko dodges over, the camera changes its focus, right? She dodges over, and then here, as she lands, the camera stops following her, and she jumps out of frame, and then we zoom in on Saya, and we see, okay, there's someone here who's attacking, and she's got like a wing thing, but it's really hard, it's all blurry, it's hard to tell who she is, but we get a sense, okay, there's the antagonist, they're throwing this stuff at her. And then again, this lovely camera follow. Like, this is something this short does so well, is choosing how to manipulate the camera. Because we land here, and one other thing I should note, as we land here with Neeko, is that because we've had this twisty motion up and over, the camera lands at an odd angle. You can see how, like, the floor is at an odd angle. This is called a Dutch angle in filmmaking, and it's something that helps you make the audience feel unstable, unbalanced, not settled. Unlike a completely like a regular angle, which is like with the horizon line flat in the image, where you feel more settled. This is still a little bit unsettling and a little bit disorienting, as though you're lying on your side or something. And then we sort of zoom in on Zaya, and the camera focuses on her for a second, and then here, whoom, it chooses to pinpoint on the quill that she's throwing in order to transition the shot without having a cut from Saya back to Neeko. we follow the quill, which helps us keep the camera oriented in space. Also, like, it means that we're not being disoriented by rapid cuts to different perspectives or different angles. We are seeing the transition from one angle to another as we follow Neeko along. The quill hits, then we follow Neeko for a second, and then the next quill is going to come in. And then we follow that one, boom, as it hits and is joined by two others. And then we get this shot, which is a wonderful opportunity to talk about the effects animation in this short. And also just, like, the quality of the 3D animation that's going on here. Something that 3D anime has struggled with for a long time is capturing the visual aesthetic and also the movement aesthetic of 2D animation. That's something that the limited 2D animation is really hard to capture in 3D for a number of reasons. One of them is lighting, which we'll talk about a little bit later. There's a great shot with Neeko where we can talk about that. But you can see how it's really well captured here, that it looks flat in the sense that 2D animation tends to look flat, without losing the benefits of 3D, which is you can do a complicated shot like this with, like, camera blur on Xayah's hand and stuff like that, as though there's a focal length of the camera, and really get that cinematic feel in there. And then there's the effects animation. That's the thing I actually wanted to talk about. It's been 6 minutes and we're 10 seconds into this thing, so yeah, it's gonna be a long one. Look at this. Like, just look at that. Look at that effects animation. This is so clever. Now, it's possible to do effects animation like this in 3D. Like, most 3D programs will have tools that would enable you to do something like this. You can functionally just kind of insert flat 2D images into the animation if you want to. Or another way that it's sometimes done is that you render the whole thing out in 3D, and then 2D animators go over the footage afterwards and add in the 2D effects. Like, you can do it both ways. It's hard to tell which one it is exactly, because, like, again, you could literally just do it both ways. I love the pop-in. Like, it just pops in. Because it only needs to pop in, because it's a flash of light, obviously. Then you get this twisty motion as it flares up, and then pops out of existence again. And that's all over. Like, you can see the sort of the chaotic glitter, glitter, sparkle, sparkle, boom. And then you get that explosion of power, and that puts the whole camera out of focus. You can see how the whole scene becomes blurry, which communicates the speed and power, because all Xayah is really doing in this next motion, the only thing she's actually doing is just pulling her arm back. Right? Like, it's not really a dramatic motion as such. It's just, she just pulls her arm back. It's not even like she snaps her arm back or anything. She just pulls it back. But because we have the motion blur and that little bit of a subtle camera shake and all the effects animation going on, and this model distortion, you can see how her fingers are being kind of not squashed or stretched, but kind of spaghettified a little bit in order to really sell the power as she pulls her hand back. You can see everything being distorted by the amount of power she's gathering to herself. And that's what gives this motion so much of its power. And then, of course, there's just this. Like, this gorgeous... I mean, the compression on YouTube has really screwed it up. Let me see. Isn't this in, like, 1440p? Yeah, there we go. That's better. Now we can really see it. But you can really see, like, that gorgeous effects animation, just, like, how the power is being sucked in. And that motion of sucking in power is going to be important in a minute. And again, selling the power of the movement by using effects. Imagine this shot without the effects, where it's just this thing, it vibrates a little bit in the rock, and then it just kind of flies backwards, right? Not a lot of power to that, but when you follow that with this bright, almost like it's a rocket's trail or something, this explosion of energy as it flies backwards, and the motion camera blur, all of a sudden you get much more of a sense of the power that Xayah is pulling into herself. So let's see that in full motion, because it's a beautiful little shot. Like, look at that. Especially with the dramatic lighting. Especially, like... And you can see also, here they're starting to do something that we're going to be talking about a lot more later. You can see how they're adding little lines to Xayah's face. These little dark lines. It might be a little hard to see on this particular YouTube video. But there's little dark lines being added to her forehead, which emphasizes the hard shadow. You can also see how quickly that hard shadow, it's not here now, and then boom, hard shadow over her eyes, giving her this intense look of anger, like, I'm gonna fuck you up, bitch. Like, really strong expression. And that's all being sold by the lighting. And you can see how the brightness of the attacks, like that, those little flashes, they deepen the shadow on her forehead even more, which intensifies her expression even harder. And she really looks terrifying right here, doesn't she? Like, this is the face of someone who's gonna kill someone. And then we get this lovely shot. This is the first wide shot we've had for the entire short, by the way. This is the first time we have gained any establishment of where the hell any of this is actually happening. So we see this weird spider cage nest thing over this statue that's draped in chains. For some reason, that's hard to understand. And here's, by the way, an important little bit of setup. As Saya is pulling back all these quills, right, some of them get stuck on the environment. They get lodged in some of the things. That's going to come up a little bit later, which was a wonderful little bit of setup that I didn't even notice the first 4 or 5 times I watched this thing. And I love the effects animation on this thing so much. Like, this is so good. These are so pretty. Just look how pretty the colors are just all in there. You've got these blues out where the power is weakest that then transition into this bright neon, sort of bright green cyan-ish. And it intensifies and intensifies and intensifies as she gathers more of her quills to her and gathers more and more power. And then this lovely little matrix shot. And here, especially here, like this shot right here, I think this is the shot in this entire short where they best managed to sell the feeling of, like, this is a bit of 2D animation, basically, that's being rendered in 3D. And part of the way they do it, part of the way that they managed to kind of solve the issue is... So in 3D animation, right, you have the computer, you tell the computer, the light source is over here, the object has these shapes, please render the light on the object in a way that's consistent with our lighting algorithm, right? So you'll always have a consistent light source that conforms to whatever presets you've told it to conform to, both on the characters and on the environment. And one of the things that 3D anime one of the reasons 3D anime sometimes just doesn't look a lot like 2D anime is because in 2D anime, you don't have a computer constantly calculating the perfect, consistent lighting angle for a given scene, and you don't have a computer calculating the lighting so that it's always consistent between the environment and the characters. This is something that came up with Arc System Works' Guilty Gear. When they transitioned into that 3D, 2D hybrid thing that they're doing, one of the things they found was one of the best ways to make the characters look like they're 2D animated is to give them a different light source than the rest of their environment. So one of the things that 3D anime has solved in recent years is the ability to create a look where you can have a distinct light source for the characters and for the environment. And here with Neeko, they sell it beautifully because they use the idea of, okay, what if Neeko was a flat drawing? What if she had lines, like a drawing that was hand-drawn? And then they do these bright little white outlines of light along where the outlines of her would be if she was a 2D animation. And you get and it gives you this wonderful hand-animated look. Like, if you screenshotted this, it would be kind of hard to tell that this was 3D all on its own. And I just love this entire shot. I love the slowness of it, but I also love, like, even though it's a slow shot, you still have that slightly juddery motion that you would get if someone was hand-animating it. Those little imperfections over and over again. That are really hard to achieve, and then we get this... Like, this is just gorgeous, isn't it? Where, again, you can see how they're using the idea of what if she had lines? Like, what if she was a drawing with lines to sell the transparency of her, where the lines retain their color, even as most of her becomes completely translucent. And it just looks really, really good. And now, again, with the camera work, here we get a quiet moment for the camera, right? We pull in on Zaya, and finally we get to see our villain properly. Like, without a whole bunch of effects, without a whole bunch of anime bullshit happening everywhere, we finally get to see our antagonist properly. And this intense searching look in her character design, but also having that stillness to introduce the villain, or the antagonist. At the moment, the ultimate villain is Zoe, but we'll get to her. Oh god, we'll get to her. She has some fantastic moments. Well, the stillness of the camera, the fact that the camera is finally holding still for a second, also means we get to notice that, oh hey, there's a sneaky little chameleon. And by the way, there's a little bit of... This has nothing to do with the animation, but isn't it like... She's a sneaky, sneaky chameleon doing stealth and trying to escape from her enemies, but the moment it's like, boom, fireworks, here I am! It's like, nice sneaking, dumbass. Maybe don't announce your appearance with, like... fireworks. Oh my god. Oh well. Anyway, that's an aesthetic thing that has nothing to do with the animated short. Lovely posing in this whole short, by the way, too. Like, really good power poses. And here, oh, this is so good. Look at this. Like, look at that. Look at that whole shot. That's so good. Just on a basic level, it's just so good. So Neeko is about to do a twirling motion, right? She's about to twirl around, spin her tail, and then throw some power or some energy or something at Saya and attack. So first she drops her weight, and then we get this moment where she brings her arm forward so that she can really swing it around, and then she kind of transitions that into this swing upwards. And then her tail whips around her in a pirouette and throws the power out at us. So look at how the effects animation is used to enhance this. Starting here, you can see this little bit of chromatic aberration appearing right up here, like completely opposite from where the power is starting to go. And then the power like gets drawn out into a line, and here we go. Here's the chromatic aberration lengthening out into a line as well. And then you can see how all of a sudden it transcribes the circle of her motion, like the spin of her motion is being implied by the effects before it actually happens, which allows the effects to transition into this more of a spiral motion rather than just a full circle. And you can really see how the light kind of trails behind and follows the chromatic aberration follows the bright light around in this complete gorgeous crescent arc curve. And then they do what I believe is a bit of model distortion. Like, I think they take her tail and just physically distort it to make it bigger in the frame to really sell the idea that she's whipping this thing right at us. And then there's this lovely cut. As the power flies at us, like our perspective, boom, we are enveloped by it. And then right here, we cut 180 degrees to instead of looking from Saya's perspective with the power coming at us, we're looking at from Neeko's perspective at the power going towards Saya, and then Rakan comes in from the side and blocks the whole thing. Again, with this gorgeous effects animation. Look at all that little sparkly stardust they sprinkled all over everything. That's everywhere in the effects animation in this short, by the way. They always remember to do all the little sparkly bits, even though they're kind of hard to see, like in the visual chaos of the explosion. They're always there, and it just sells the glitteriness of everything so well. And again, look at Rakan's pose. Like this is like a lovely power pose, like a lovely protection. Vroom. As Saya is still kind of bracing herself against the power. And now she realizes Rakan was there to take the hit for her. But also, look at the acting here, right? She realized, okay, Rakan was here to take the hit for me, but there's no, oh, thank you, my love, for protecting me from getting hit in the face with some kind of Eldritch power blast from a Star Guardian. It's just, get out of my way, loser, I have a girl to kill! She literally physically pushes him aside, right? It's literally just, fuck you, I'm gonna kill someone! Ah! And so you get a really good sense of the relationship that they have. And then more gorgeous effect animation as she transitions into her dark form. This is my true form. And it's a really sudden thing, like she's here, right? And you can see how she turns her shoulder into it, and then all of a sudden she jumps. It's very powerful and sudden, and then this, like, oh, this is a gorgeous little... Again, these really strong poses on the characters. And we don't even see her throw anything. We just see her summon the quills and start the motion, that swing around. And then, oh boy. And again, the camera isn't actually moving very fast here. Like, it's quick, but it's not like super speed. But the power is being sold by the use of anime speed lines all around the edges. And here again, here's something classic anime. These are those, what are they called? Power flashes that are being used to sell the impact of certain attacks that she's doing. And what it looks like is that Neeko has barely managed to dodge, which you can kind of see because, like, the hit is here, right? But as we transition back out, Neeko has sort of just barely managed to dodge past it. You can see it coming down here. And again... Look what the camera does. Immediately, now we're heading back into a chase sequence. The camera goes low to the ground. Low to the ground, close in on Neeko, so that we're forced to focus on her and react to things as she does, as Rakan comes charging here with the glamour. What's it called? His ultimate. And again, the classic light trailing around after the eyes as he moves. And Neeko seemingly managing barely to dodge out of it as Xayah comes in. And this is a lovely shot as well. This is when Neeko transforms. You see it? Zip. And look at the transition from one model to the other. There's some really clever shit going on here. See Neeko's tail? It's here, right? That's her tail. Boom. Now it's Xayah's wings. So, like, the transition between the two forms, if this was too jarring, it would be too hard to notice, because the audience also needs to be a little bit confused when we come out of this and Neeko lands as Xayah. Like, the first time I watched that in full speed, I wasn't sure that that was Neeko. Like, oh, hang on, why is Xayah there all of a sudden? I was a little confused, but I was ready to accept that, oh yeah, that's definitely Xayah. Where all of a sudden you get these two Xayahs fighting each other, and you are in this moment of confusion a little bit, if you're anything like me. Like, maybe you're more perceptive than I am, and you immediately spotted it. But for me, the first time, it was like, oh, hang on, two Xayahs? And you're not the only one who's confused. Let me see. Let's see if we can get back to that transformation moment. There it is. I love the transformation. You can see it. It happens instantly here. Here she's Neeko. Here she's Xayah. Instant transformation. But it's so smooth because they use whatever features Neeko has that look a little bit like Xayah's features to kind of ease the transition from one form into another. So it doesn't really look jarring. And then this cool-ass shot as she does this spin and lands. And again, motion smears being used to communicate the motion, which is something that they do a lot in this thing. And then another thing is, like, the moment Neeko transitions into Xayah, this is something I thought was just really clever, is she begins to move exactly like Xayah. Like, she transitions instantly into a movement aesthetic that's exactly like Xayah. Something that might have been easy to do, I think, would be to have her look like Xayah, but still move like Neeko, to kind of indicate that there's a deception taking place there. But I like that they didn't do that. Like, that, for me, that's a pretty good decision. And again, strong poses. And then we see this wonderful moment of confusion where this is Neeko, right? She's been, like, the explosion that happened at her feet, boom, has thrown her into this pillar. Boom. And now she's the only Xayah on screen, and Rakan is coming running. So he's like, wait, shit, oh god, oh no, who is it? Fuck, I'll choose that one. And so he shoots at his own girlfriend like an idiot. And heals her as well. Which is so clever. And this is the moment when he realizes, oh wait, no, I screwed up. And then there's also this moment when we start to realize, oh, hang on, something might be going on with Xayah here. I love the detail that he accidentally heals Neeko. Like that. You can see that moment of chromatic aberration again, like how the colors get washed out all of a sudden. As you can see, the corruption begins to take over poor Xayah. And Rakan is like, well... You can see Neeko kind of feels bad about it. Oh, sorry for making you punch her. I didn't mean to do that. Bye. God, this is a really good effect. Anyway. And here we get the acting, which is something we haven't had a lot of, like the emotional character acting. Where Xayah remains angry. Like, the whole time. She's never not angry in this thing. And we finally get this sense that Rakan cares a lot more about protecting Xayah than he does about killing Neeko. Which is being, like, it's not so subtle or anything, but it's communicated well that that's his main concern, is protecting her. And Xayah, much like when Rakan protected her last time, is just like, out of my way, nerd, I need to kill someone. And you can see that Rakan is like, Babe, couldn't we just, like, please not? Okay, fine, I'm tired now. And the corruption has started spreading on him instead. So he's got this self-sacrificing thing, which is also communicated well in that what he does throughout this entire short is constantly try to shield Xayah and take her pain onto himself. And once again, back to that low shot following the character closely, out to a wide shot so we can actually see what's going on here. And I personally am curious about that pirate ship. If that's what it looks like a ship. Like, that looks like a mast and like a crow's nest and then a hull. I'm curious about that ship. Like, why is there a ship in here? But we finally get a wide shot of, this is where we started. That's down where the statue is. And this is just gorgeous. Like, this is just some gorgeous environment design all around. Where we get a moment to orient ourselves, and we see that Neeko is traveling upwards. And then, weirdly, we transition into what seems to be a flashback for Neeko as she's thinking back on something, which communicates some information to us that we need in order to kind of infer what's going on with her. And the rendering here, this painting-like aesthetic is just beautiful. And again, low camera following Neeko right from the front, basically. So we're constantly moving along with her, and you can kind of see how the camera is a little bit stabilized on her, so that, like, she's never out of frame. She's always, like, the thing that's leading the movement of the action. And I love this shot. Like, I love that, like, yeah, she's gonna run on the walls. Why not? We just, whoops, we're on the walls now. Because it messes with our perception of gravity, right? Because gravity is down, and down is this way right now. But now, down is that way. Like, over, well, it's not up, but it's over here. So look at what happens with the way she moves. I love the little disorientation that you get there. And this one is much better. Like, when we get this is one of my very small minor nitpicks, is when we get the transition shot from here into Neeko's little flashback, it's a little bit unclear that, I guess it's Neeko's flashback because she's there, but where did that come from? But then the second flashback we get here when Neeko is running is much better, because what happens is her face charges into the screen so that we're immediately transitioned to inside her head. And I can't be sure, but I think, actually, right here, I think, they 2D animate her face. This is 2D animated, this is not 3D anymore. And we get yet another beautiful painterly tableau showcasing some of the different characters that are relevant to Neeko's particular experience. So we see, okay, they used to be a team, I see. We can kind of infer that from the lineup. And then we get this shot. And again, like, the environment design in this whole thing is just gorgeous. Presumably right now where we are is either some kind of Star Guardian sanctuary that has been corrupted by Zoe, or something along those lines. We're certainly in Zoe's realm, because everything is bloody chaotic. But look at the lighting. Look at the light, like, on her character model and on the environment. These bright, bright lights that kind of put outlines on her character model as she moves. It's absolutely gorgeous. And then again, here we get perhaps the most stable shot we've ever had when we do the following thing. But it's still low to the ground, and it's still very close in on Neeko, and we get this lovely depth of perception thing with her tail flopping in our faces all the time as she finally jumps through to, I guess, what's supposed to be freedom? But as it turns out, oh no, I didn't actually go anywhere. I just, all of a sudden, I'm right back where I began. And like I said, look, some of the quills that Xayah was trying to pull back into herself embedded in the statue, having left marks and scars on it. That's just a really good little bit of visual setup and payoff that you probably kind of don't notice unless you're looking for it. Unless, again, you're more perceptive than me, which you very well might be. So she's been running and running and running and running and running, and she hasn't gone anywhere. And we get this moment right here, where it's almost like the entire environment, it's not just that she's standing up, but the entire environment is spinning around her, which again helps to communicate her confusion, right? That the whole room seems to be working against her, which is further emphasized by the spider cage sort of legs on this particular statue, as we see reality begin to distort, and this is where Zoe finally shows herself. And oh, Zoe, we are going to talk about your little animation moment in a little bit. As for her, like, this, not much to say about her that hasn't been said already. It's just, it's wonderfully animated. I do love the hand motions. Like, take a look at how her hands are. This right here, you can see how everything gets a little bit spaghettified to kind of sell the motion upwards. And you can see how the fingers get bent backwards to really sell the movement of her hands inwards there as well. And I love the little finger wiggle she does. Like, there's a lot of subtle little animation details with her where I feel like I kind of wish, and this is an aesthetic thing, that her face was a little bit more malleable. Like, that it wasn't just, like, anime faces tend to be 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. And there's no, like, sense of cheekbones, and there's no sense of cheeks, and there's, like, you can't really do anything with the skin to communicate the character expressions, which I really wish they would do a little bit more with Zoe in particular to make her look more demented. But they do a good job by, again, you can see there that subtle little dark shadow over her eyes, which strengthens her expression. And again, look at that. I love the detail that inside the, I guess it's Zoe's tunnel, you get this checkerboard pattern that's all distorted and twisted around. That's a lovely little chaos detail. Very Madoka. And here's some really good acting. And again, this is one shot where I'm like, if I didn't know it was 3D animated, I wouldn't be able to tell, because you can see how the lines are being so heavily emphasized to really make her look like she's being drawn, which again comes down to Star Guardians, at least historically, have been very closely aping the aesthetics of like 90s anime. Although they've transitioned somewhat more into, well, your Precure, your more modern magical girl animes with these new skins. I love this. Look at this. So she turns around with Zoe, and Zoe is like, ha. And then Neeko gets mad. And you can see that she gets mad because, oh, wait, hang on. This suddenly got a lot brighter. And Zoe's like, oh, well, that's not good. And her hair, look at her hair. This is one thing that always bothers me in 3D anime, by the way. Typically, they're so unwilling to really do hair animation because that's freaking time-consuming. It takes a million years to do right. But in this short, look at how much motion. I wish we actually focused on Neeko in this shot, because look how much the hair is moving. Look at that. Like, that's so good. That's so gorgeous. And I really wish we got a better look at that, because that's like some Studio Ghibli shit right there in terms of, because you can see the complexity of hair motion. This is why 2D animators even aren't that fond of doing it, and 3D animators certainly aren't. You have to animate all these different strands to make them move in a way that is chaotic, but also consistent with the air. You can see that little, like her bangs whip up and the whole thing. I love this. This is, it's so good. It's so good. Look at that. That's so cool. Because the animator has to know what they're doing. You can't just randomly have every bit of hair flopping around with no rhyme or reason. You have to have a sense of how would this strand of hair move if an air current was kind of exploding from below or within her. And more gorgeous effects animation right there. And there's a contrast, by the way, something to notice, that some of the effects in this short, like Neeko's tail attack, let's see if we can find it. It's somewhere around here. Yeah, there. Some of these effects, right? You can kind of see these look 2D. They look very like, okay, this, you painted a flat color surface and you added a whole bunch of glow to it, right? They look kind of 2D like you would see in a 2D animation, but then sometimes they look distinctly much more like 3D rendering. Like, they look much more like they're being realistically rendered by a computer than being rendered by human hands. And I kind of like that contrast. Like, I like that they're using both of those aesthetics in concert, because especially for the most powerful moments of animation, they tend to use these 3D generated looking animation effects, and it looks brilliant. And in combination with, see the sphere of, I guess, energy or wind that's flowing around Zoe, that has more of a 2D feel to me, just a little bit. Like with the flat white color surfaces that are kind of moving across her body in that way. Let's see, what's the effects? Yeah, still, they remember the sparkle. And oh, this is a good shot. Look at this. Look at Zoe whipping her arm forward, right? That's a very unnatural position for an arm to... Like, arms are not supposed to do that. That's not how arms are supposed to look, but this is a completely intentional choice. You're breaking the model in order to emphasize the woof when she finally whips it around. Like, it's like a whip that's being cracked. Shoomph. And again, this very strong pose where we still get the intensity of her expression all the time. Vroom, all the way around. And that really sells the power of what she's doing. And then Saya doing her ult. And I wonder if we can see... Yeah, there. See? She's been uncorrupted just for a second when she uses her full power. And here you can kind of see the contrast. The wings are 3D objects, I believe. Yeah. And again, look at this shot. Like, this is a wallpaper right here. If we removed some of all the motion blur anyway, this would be a gorgeous wallpaper. And I love the camera work. I love the camera work here. How you see, you get this quiet moment almost where you can see Zoe throwing her shot and Saya starting to throw out her quills. And then the camera just goes zoom. And here again, right there. There. You can see it, right? We transition from Neeko's 3D model into 2D animation to really sell that she's pissed off now. She's very, very angry. And it looks so good. And again, look at that, look at that, look at that. You can see her eyebrows actually get a little thicker. As her expression gets more and more intense, more and more lines appear in her face, her eyebrows get thicker and darker, until finally, she's a JoJo! And it looks so good. Like, you can see the kind of the strobing and the movement of all that darkness, right? Those simulate shadows. They're not accurate shadows in any way, shape, or form, but they simulate shadows, and they really add to the intensity of her expression. Like, just take a look at it in motion. In half-speed motion, anyway. Actually, let's look at that in full speed motion, because it looks so good in motion. I am a JoJo! It's very, very good. And again, I believe this is 2D animated. And this is something this short does, like, with a really interesting... Like, it seems like anytime the short needs a certain kind of aesthetic, they just switch to 2D animation, and they don't give a shit. Like, oh, it's 2D animated now, you're not going to notice. And then they switch back to 3D animation whenever it's convenient, and I really like that. Because this shot of Zaya is definitely 2D. Or is it? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. But then, this shot of Neeko, 3D. And the gorgeous effects animation once again. Wababoom! And this, look at that. Look at how cool that is. Again with the flash frames. That's what they're called, flash frames. That are hand animated. To really just sell the idea that this right here is so bright that everything around it goes black by comparison. Boom! So cool. And I love the little diving. As you see how she does it, right? She basically, I'm on a diving board now, boing, and then whoop. It's a really good animation. And again, Saya trying to protect herself, and then Rakan is like, I'll take the hit for you! Like an idiot. Oh well, like a hero. Now here's one shot that I felt like was a little, like, compared to the brilliant animation of so much of the rest of it. This right here of Saya, like, something about this feels a little clumsy to me. Like, compared with the strong poses and the power of the rest of it. This shot, it's not an important shot, like, it doesn't matter that much, but something about her movement right there just feels a little bit stiff and clunky compared to the rest of the short. which like is not wholly unintentional. It's because she's being like, oh, the whole ground is moving below me, so I'm wobbling on my feet. But it looks just a little bit like she doesn't really catch her weight right. I can't really describe it, but like I have little nitpicks like that in a few places. And then here again, see what I mean? Whenever they needed to, they just transition into 2D animation when they want. Because right here, this is 2D animation now. Not the environment. The environment is still 3D animated, but Neeko and Zoe are 100% 2D. And this is where I have another one of my little gripes. Because, well, I don't think Zoe and Neeko look quite on model, as it were. Especially here. Like, this Neeko and this shot here, like, is a little... Like, they're only into... they're not keyframes or anything, so it's not important, but I feel like the animated version of Zoe and Neeko don't look quite on model with what they look like in their 3D animated forms. And that, like, part of that seems to be intentional because we have transitioned... We're basically in Zoe's realm now, in the realm of chaos. So it makes a little bit of sense that the characters would look a little different, but... This just doesn't look quite like... The shape expression of this face is much more standard anime, whereas... let's see if we can find the shot I'm thinking of. It's when she falls down and comes back here. Like, look at that. Like, that very long nose bridge down into that, like, the big lips and this very short jaw. And this very, like, the forehead into that very long nose bridge that then comes out like that. That's what her 3D model looks like. And then we head into... let's see. Here. Like, that's not the same face. That's not the same face at all. It's not even the same facial anatomy. And that's like... It's really fucking cool that they shift between 2D animation and 3D animation. I just wish that they'd done a little bit more in the 2D section to keep it on model with the 3D character. Not that they have to replicate it perfectly, but it would be nice if they just looked a little bit more like they were rendered in the same particular visual aesthetic. Anyway, let's head back into it, because it's... The 2D section has some of the best stuff in this whole short, by the way. I don't want to just, like, bag on it the whole time. I do love... this is probably a lot more visible if we go to normal speed. I do love one thing about this. That you get, like... where the 3D animation was always, like, smoother than you'd probably be able to make 2D animation. Here, we're fully into 2D animated, like, limited animation territory. And you can really see that in the way that the movement of the characters is communicated. That it's much more... snappy. Like, you can see that there's a much lower frame rate going on here, and there's supposed to be. Again, there's an intentional aesthetic shift because we're in Zoe's realm, and I like that. Like, I like that they fully embrace, okay, let's do this completely in 2D animation because we frickin' can. I love that. And I wish that more anime would be mixes of 2D and 3D in this way. And here comes the really good shit. Like, here comes the really good shit. Look at this. As Neeko is finally pulled fully into Zoe's realm. Look at that. Oh, look at that. Look at that. That's so cool. First of all, they've changed the rendering completely. It looks like it's rendered with coal or charcoal, or what's it called? Pastel. It looks like it's rendered with pastel, which is a really difficult thing to animate. But like, it's easier with the digital technology, obviously, but it's kind of difficult to animate things in pastel this way and keep it on model. So they don't bother, because here we're in the realm of chaos and everything is being pulled apart. And like, it's really disturbing when you stop and frame by frame your way through it. And here comes the really good shit. Hello, Zoe. See, this is what I meant when I said that I wish her 3D model could do a little bit more by distorting the face and giving her like smile lines and like wrinkles where her expression is really kind of screwed up and manic. Because, oh yeah, oh, that's the good shit. Oh, this is so cool. Look at this. This is so good. How when she really transitions into her fully maniacal form, all the shapes of her body are just like she's turned into this flame of a creature almost. And by the way, notice the relative frame rates. You can see how the background moves And then she moves. The background moves, she moves. The background moves, she moves. And that's to separate Zoe's movement from the movement of the background, which helps the animation from feeling too static. And I just love the distortions here. Like, I love how distorted they make her. Like, they really just, okay, let's just fuck some shit up. Let's just go mad. And this, oh, it's so gorgeous. I love, like, I'm so, this is, because I'm a manga aficionado. Like, more than anime, I like manga. I like that a lot. And I love when they pull in stuff like this. Like, to really sell the madness of what's happening. And see how her hands are just spaghettified completely. And then, boom! And again, the background is moving, she's moving, background moving, she's moving. Like, they just go completely ham to really make Zoe terrifying, which is necessary, because, like, she's not on her own that scary. She's a little girl, like, with some, like, accessories on and a weird like, she looks like someone's OC a little bit, right? But then here's like, oh, wait, no, there's actually a reason why she's terrifying. She's an embodiment of madness, and this whole shot is just so freaking good. I want to watch this shot on repeat a few times. I just... Like, it's... You see how she distorts completely out of her shape, right? Her body kind of disintegrates almost. And she becomes the void. Like, her eyes there, and then boom, she becomes the sucking void that consumes light, that consumes everything, and there's her eye, pulling in these little plushies of the Star Guardians that she means to destroy. It's so good. It's so good. And was still in... Yeah. And then she wakes up 2D animated. And again, not really looking that much like the 3D model, but it's a little better. And then the moment it needs her to be 3D, boom, we just transition into a 3D shot. And it works so well together. Like, that's what's really impressive about these things, is that they can make 2D and 3D work together so seamlessly. So that when you're watching the whole thing in motion, sometimes you barely notice the transition. Let's see. Anything good here? Well, yeah, there's the stars and sparklies. Always good details. I do love the fluidity of Zoe's, like, she kind of does that little curve motion up, which then leads into her spin, and you can see how one of her arms kind of lags behind and follows along with her hair, so she gets this wonderful pirouetting motion as she sprinkles a little bit of corruption dust, like Psycho Tinkerbell. And again, 2D. Right back to a 2D shot whenever we need it. And the same thing's going to happen with Ari, I think, in a second. And this is, again, one of the points where 3D animation kind of shows its limitations a little bit. See, I would have loved for this to be rendered in 2D as well, because then you could do those extreme expressions on Neeko. As it is right now, she's being corrupted by the darkness of the Chaos Void, or whatever the case may be with Zoe. But her expression is more like, oh, I've got such a headache. Like, I would have loved to have a more distorted expression on her face, like a real, like she's in mortal suffering, to really sell what's happening to her, but, you know. Trade-offs. You always make trade-offs in animation. And then here, boom. This is one of the things I like about the motion aesthetic of anime. Boom. Like, no... There's no gentle transition into it. It's just, boom, this wall is gone now. And you get this little moment to catch Ari between the rocks, framed here. And then, zoom. And then she lands. And here's another bit where I feel like the animation is a little clunky. 2D animated again. There, this. Ari's stepping forward. Like that. That seemed a little motion tweened. Like, I don't really like... And I think it's because the dress, the skirt moves in a somewhat weird way. And her hair. that doesn't really quite sell the motion of what she's doing. And here it's a little, I feel is a little bit of a problem, because this is supposed to be her grand introduction moment, right? Like the moment when she's like, I am here to save the day. Like All Might bursting through the walls. And because that motion doesn't quite work fully, at least not for me, it kind of robs the moment of a little bit of its power. And I think it's also the framing. Like, I like the idea of having this giant hole in the wall and then Ari framed against this glorious starry sky, because she's a Star Guardian and all that. But I feel like the composition doesn't quite present her as this glorious, overwhelming, like this glorious savior. But it works for what it's supposed to do. And here I think we have a mix of 2D and 3D, very specifically, actually. I haven't been able to figure it out completely. Because we go here, right? And that's all 3D. Her model is definitely 3D. But then there's this. I think her hair is 2D animated, actually. Or else it's just very convincingly 3D animated. No, it has to be 2D. And I think her eyes are as well. Like, her hair and her eyes are 2D, but the rest of the model is 3D, I think. Which, again, is the kind of like, aesthetic mixing that I think is really cool. And I wish that we do see more of in 3D anime in general, even though it's probably incredibly work-intensive. But anyway, I've been rambling about this for like 50 minutes now. It's a 3-minute short. It's not my personal best. I think I've done more with like a 30-second short or something like that. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. Like, that hair, it's so cool! It's so good. It's a really good animated short. I really like it. I love the animated shorts that they do, and I wish that Riot would just fucking license the anime to some studio already. Because, like, it's what you want to do. It's what the skin line needs in order to tell its story. It needs an anime or a manga adaptation. Get on it, Riot. Why haven't you already? I don't understand why they haven't already put a Star Guardians animated series into production, like with Netflix or something. And it's usually because Riot don't want to give away any of their, like, they don't want to license away their IP. They're massively protective of it. It took them ages even to have a deal with Marvel to license their IP for the comic series that are happening, which I should really get on taking a look at. But the Star Guardians need it. Like, you made these things to have their stories told in an anime format. So, like, it's weird that they haven't done it already. Anyway, I love the short. I just wish they'd give us the anime already. Because, God, they want to. They clearly want to. Why haven't they? Anyway, that's enough. That's enough. I'm going to stop now. My name has been TV's Guide. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button, the comment button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon, and all the other buttons, because that's how YouTube channels get to stay alive. If you want to support this channel more directly, well, there's a Patreon for that specific purpose where you can sign up for a monthly subscription of like $1 a month, and then there's some rewards and yada yada, and that's very helpful for me. If you don't want to do a monthly subscription, I have a tip jar or two down in the description that you can use to give me a one-time donation to say, hey, you talked about Neeko's hair for a weirdly long amount of time in a 3-minute animated short. I'm going to give you $3 to never do that again, and I would be very grateful for that as well. As I say at the end of my videos, to online content creators like me, $1 can be the same as thousands of views on a video, like literal thousands of views, and it can be the same as tens of thousands of views on a website that is supported by advertising. So even though those $1, $2, $3 donations that you can give, they don't feel like very much, they don't feel like they make a difference, they really genuinely do. Like, they matter a lot more than you think. So whether it's me or someone else, if there is an online content creator whose work you enjoy, whose work you admire and you want to help them out, consider supporting them. Like, with just a $1, $2, $3 donation, for all of us, that stuff makes a big difference. Anyway, if you haven't enjoyed this video, well, there's a dislike button down below that you can hit for that very purpose. It's animated both in 2D and 3D, and you will never know which unless you slow down and watch the footage of yourself clicking the dislike button, like, really, really slowly, and then you can make, like, a 4.5-hour video dissecting it on YouTube and get $10 in ad revenue. And that's a good use of your time. Thank you for watching.